Hi, I'm Connie Whitman, your host, and you're listening to Enlightenment of Change on webtalkradio.net. You know, I love that you are joining us weekly. So my motivational quote, of course, I will start with that, is by Steve Jobs, and he says, "The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do." So my question to you guys, are you one of the crazy ones who dare to go out and change the world? Do you actually feel powerful or, unfortunately, maybe powerless? And maybe at times I think we feel both. So sometimes it's hard to be the voice of what could be, of what we see could be. But for 1 second, think about what our world could look like if we had the power to change it. Would you become part of that change? Well, today my guest is going to enlighten us big time. Her name is Katherine Jegede, and I hope I said that right. And we're going to discuss her new book called Infinite Possibilities: How to Use the Ideas of Neville Goddard to Create the Life You Want. Now, Kate says her book gives the reader the ability to make life exactly what you want it to be by revealing the substance and purpose of life, and allow us all to be able to eliminate the delusion that keeps us in that powerless state. Now, Kate is a British television presenter and author with a background in science. She was first introduced to metaphysics as a teenager by her mom, a former yoga teacher and education specialist. And Kate developed a penetrating and enduring fondness for the self-empowering teachers of Neville Goddard. After post-grad research at Oxford, Kate moved to Switzerland to work at the World Health Organization, where she developed educational resources for rural communities in sub-Saharan Africa. In addition to her academic science career, Kate has worked with the BBC Science Unit and BBC Radio Oxford. She served as news editor of the international journal Africa Health, for whom she assisted in the establishment of a learning resource and study center at one of Nigeria's forefront teaching hospitals. Whew! She's been published in the internationally acclaimed science journal Nature, and Kate has also presented 2 science series and aimed at young adults for Channel 4 in the UK, earning a BAFTA nomination. She's wonderful. So please help me welcome Kate to the show. Thank you, Kate, for being on for the second time.
It's so exciting to be here. You know, we had this great connection the last time we spoke, and it feels so natural to be talking to you again.
And it's funny, you know, as I was reading through, writing the outline, and I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't repeat, you know, her whole credential, because, you know, they heard it the first time. And as I was going through, I was like, no, I can't eliminate that. No, I can't eliminate that. And the reason is it speaks to, like, who you are, the whole of who you are, with this extremely extensive scientific, philanthropic, newsworthy kind of background, which adds to, number one, your credibility, but also I think the topic that we're talking about, from that scientific meets that human side of things, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really nice. I think it's nice to be reminded of some of the things that we've done in life. I think we get so caught up in the day-to-day grind that we forget that, oh my gosh, I've done some really interesting things. And when you hear that, it really encourages you, inspires you, emboldens you. So that was really useful as you were speaking. I'm thinking, yeah, this is good for me to hear.
And we really, and everybody I know can relate to this that's listening or watching, Kate. We are our own worst enemy every day, right? We have that negative record player. So yeah, sometimes it's nice to reflect back and say, hey, wait, I've done some pretty cool things in my life. It's nice to be recognized for that. So I'm glad I didn't delete anything, and I'm glad that you appreciate that. And I hope, again, that everybody listening thinks, whew, you know, she's smart cookie, Kate. So let me tune in now. Let me really listen to the show. So before we jump into today's, you know, we're going to kind of dig a little deeper than we did last time, and you're going to talk about the new things you're doing, which is awesome. Before we do that, just quickly give a brief, because it was a long discussion, you know, 35 minutes last time, but give a brief overview and then we'll kind of jump from there, okay?
Okay, sure. So when we spoke before, I spoke about the book, I introduced myself, and I was talking about my motivation for writing the book. So for anyone who isn't familiar, Neville Goddard was this mystic. He's of English and Irish and Scottish heritage, but grew up in the Caribbean on the island of Barbados, and he traveled to the States as a teenager, something of a pioneer in this sort of work where his mission, if you like, or message became people discovering who they really are, and this kind of God aspect, this infinite aspect of ourselves, which is embodied in what we term the human imagination, which for many people is this aspect of the mind or this function of the brain that enables us to perceive things that aren't physical facts. But what Neville was saying was that this is consciousness, pure and unadulterated consciousness, and the
You froze. Just repeat
as you
that.
mentioned,
Repeat that, Kate. You froze for a second. Just repeat that. Go ahead.
Okay. So through my relationship with this philosophy, which started, as you mentioned, in my teens, with Neville certainly, but metaphysics on the whole was something I was introduced to as a child. I began to play with the ideas and found that I was able to use it in my own day-to-day life. And I became very, very passionate about sharing the message. I didn't know how I was going to be able to share the message with anyone, but when my publisher, Penguin, picked up the book, I was surprised, but not at the same time, because Neville teaches that we're not supposed to focus on how things are going to happen. We're supposed to say, yes, they are happening, and they're happening through me. Sometimes we say little insignificant me, but no, let's start to say that, wow, I was chosen to bring this message into the world, and start to celebrate that we all have something to do. So we were able to talk about the book and talk about some of the things that I've been able to do with it. So it's all about really getting in tune with yourself, establishing a connection between your physical expression and this infinite creative side of yourself, and then you start to learn about what role you're playing in as a member of the global community, and how you're supposed to help each other, what you're supposed to learn while you're here. So that's part of what we went through.
And I love this topic because I think that there's so much more to us, and if you are willing to listen and imagine what could be, again, kind of like my introduction. It was really cute. Last week I was teaching with a client, and there were these two very young, new to the work environment. Now I teach in a corporate, setting. And I don't know what I said about positive energy. I always talk about people, your customers certainly can feel your energy. So if you're negative, they're going to be, I don't think I really want to deal with you, whether you say anything wrong or not, right? It's this feeling. So we talk about positive energy, again, from the customer's perspective and how we influence each other. And during lunch, these two young ladies said to me, what's a good book to read? And I was almost taken back. And I said, why? And they said, well, you believe in the universe and the universe gives you what you need. And I said, yes, I do. Do you? And they were like, yes. And they both were like, we're starting to read about it and learn about it. And so, of course, one of my favorites is Wayne Dyer. So I said, just pick up Wayne Dyer. It'll bring you to the next level of what you've been investigating, and a very simple, easy way to implement different behaviors. You know how we always gives an exercise, right?
Yeah.
And they were writing it down feverishly. And then I said, listen to the show. I talk about corporate stuff and sales and all of that, which are super important. But sometimes we have to look within to become better out, right? And I said, so I have a lot of those topics. So they're going to love the show, Kate. So I'm excited. But I'm always taking a step back when I'm in this very corporate kind of setting, especially when young people will start to question, what about, and I love that. I get excited because it's not just, here's the curriculum, learn it and regurgitate it to your customers. There's so much more to connecting with other humans. And you tap into that just really well. So the book is definitely a tool everybody should read, number one. But now let me thank you for that brief introduction so everybody kind of gets where we're going, right, with this show. So now last time I know you were talking about a new book, yay, and that you were going to go a little deeper into the esoteric side of things. So number one, where are we with that? And the other thing explain to everybody what you mean by the esoteric metaphysics. And I think we need to define things for people. And once you do, they're like, oh, I get it, right? So why don't we start with that?
So by esoteric, I specifically mean the language that is traditionally associated with metaphysics. So we're very much used to the practical approach. We're used to the ideas. If we say, for instance, meditate or pray, these are terms that people are familiar with, and they can get into the exercises like Wayne Dyer's, like the ones I write about, and others through that kind of language. They can relate to the information like that. But sometimes what happens is people aren't entirely clear on the subtle differences that exist. So it's English language, but the meaning in a metaphysical context can change in quite meaningful ways. So for a very simple example, the word love in a metaphysical context actually refers to attention rather than the emotion that we feel for one another or things or animals or whatever it might be. So it's that kind of thing, helping them to understand how the language changes when it's put into a metaphysical context so that they can go deeper into the subject and challenge themselves in greater ways. So the first book, I think, lays a really wonderful foundation. And I'm not saying that it's one of those things where you have to keep buying the next one and the next one, but it's just for people who, especially people who feel they want to work for other people. There is a certain confidence you need to establish, a certain courage you need when you say you're going to use this philosophy to help someone else. You need to really be sure about what you're doing, because if somebody's looking to you to help them, I know from personal experience, a lot of anxiety can be attached to that if you feel that you're not going to be able to deliver what they're looking to you for. But if you understand the language, understand how it changes, I present it almost like a glossary of terms interwoven in the exercises in this new book, so that people can begin to really work with it in ways they never thought imaginable. And I could speak a little bit more about what I'm doing a bit later on, but just to give you an idea, that's where I'm going with this new book. But I think it's important that they start with the basics. As Neville always says, put first things first. I think it's like somebody who is a theology student sort of running to the book of Revelation in the Bible and trying to understand it in a theological kind of way. But no, you need to understand that this is what these terms mean. Numbers don't translate into literal numbers or calendar numbers. They mean things. For instance, 3 means grace, and all of these kinds of things. All of the symbolism. It's important that people get a grounding in that education as well.
It's fascinating because you're right. To understand, you have to understand the language and the connections. And you use the word, it can be a challenge, right? When we're trying to help someone, whatever, to do our job, to be a mom. It doesn't matter, whatever it is.
Yeah.
To take care of your animal. It doesn't matter. It is a challenge every day to be able to, again, show up. It's a challenge, and I think that a lot of people, more and more, at least I'm seeing it. Maybe because my perspective has changed, so I'm seeing more of it, and you could speak to that more than I can. But I'm seeing more and more people intrigued and investigating and learning, like these 2 young ladies last week. So your book is so timely, and I did read the first book, Infinite Possibilities, and it's so funny. I'll just share with you my experience. As I was reading it, I'm like, yeah, oh yeah, oh, I got it. I like that one. I got it. And some exercises, it was like, oh yes, I absolutely have to implement that. Some of them, and you say this in the book, the ones that don't work for you, that's okay. The ones that do work for you, keep exploring it. At some point, the other ones might come into context for you. It was so true. So again, how you've written the book is so normal. Again, I don't know if that's a good word to use, but it's so normal and easy to understand that as I was reading, I'm telling you, I was like, yeah, oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. I'm going to start doing that one. And then it just becomes part of how we do and live, right? And that's really the objective of what you're trying to teach, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. So once people understand what's being required, exercise more effectively.
Can you?
Did we freeze again?
Yes, you froze for a second, but that's okay. It was
Okay.
brief. Talk a little bit about significant events that maybe have taken place since we last spoke that for you are this is how and why it works. Or do you have examples like that?
Yeah, so one of the things I noticed was my responses to people really changed. I saw a maturity there, some growth. I would get a lot of emails, particularly around when the book first came out and I was doing all the interviews and things like that. I'd kind of be inundated with messages and I would answer as best I could, but it felt very much that I was answering them from the knowledge I had. So I've studied Neville for such a long time. I have my own experiences, and so I was answering like that. But when I found that people were beginning to ask me to solve things for them, I had to really go inside and think about, first of all, is it my place to do that? What do I do? How did Neville handle that kind of thing? So there are two ladies. One lady was recovering from a divorce and had a very, very difficult time with her children and felt that she didn't know what to do. And I was saying to her, you know what, this is about you. This is a lesson for you. There's something in this that you need to learn about who you are, about your own strength. And then she began to open up about childhood traumas, childhood abuse and things like that. So people were getting really personal with me. So I wanted not just to give them, you know, like a placebo or, you know, to placate them in some way. Sure. I really wanted to give them something that they would come back to me and say, oh my goodness, what you said really worked, or, you know, but most importantly, that they felt that something in them had opened and they were starting to feel their own strength coming back, their sense of self-worth. So working through the exercises, some of the exercises, and one of them was casting the burden. It's just saying, are you really God? Is it really true? And it's just taking their pain and suffering, or hers, out of context. She was able to come back after a while. It took about 3 or 4 months, but she came back and said, I'm sleeping for the first time and I've been doing these exercises religiously. My son that I thought I would never speak to again picked up the phone and called me. So it began to feel that this is really, she hadn't spoken to her son, I think, in like 17 years. Ugh. And her son called her and it brought me to tears, Connie. So I thought, ugh. Right, I didn't just say, okay, do this exercise. I really went within and I said, you know, I'm trusting consciousness to tell me what exercise to tell this person. Another woman, I'm still working with her now, told me that she has a really serious health condition. As a woman, it's terrifying to be diagnosed with cancer, and the particular cancer that she has. And I'm not saying that I've healed her cancer, but for her to come back and say, I was absolutely terrified, and now that fear has gone and I'm beginning to see clearly, I have the courage to speak to my doctors about what I want. It's really changing. So it's not about stuff and people getting stuff, but people actually starting to experience healing, and me feeling that this work is a part of that, and that's just blowing me away.
Oh, you gave me goosebumps. It's because you know what's so funny, Kate, and I know you believe this, we have the power within us already. We don't all know how to tap into that power, and the book Infinite Possibilities again helps you do that. But isn't that lovely that people after reading your book is reaching out to you? Number one, that but I have to say, I'm not surprised. You're lovely. The way you write is so lovely. You are so approachable that I totally get why people are reaching out and saying, here's my horrific situation. I'm at a loss. I read the book. Like, where do I even begin? This helplessness that they felt trusting you is huge, by the way, kiddo. So kudos that you've laid that groundwork of trust right out of the gate. I find remarkable and beyond impressive. So it's and the other thing though, Kate, you take it seriously, and this is another thing I think that we humans, we learn something, we help someone, and we think, oh yeah, no big deal. It is a big deal. It is a big deal when we're able to help someone. So instead of poo-pooing that or minimizing that effort or that effectiveness with whatever it is that we help someone with, dig deeper. It's again, it's a challenge. It's hard to do that because we don't want to overstep. What if they think I'm a jerk? Well, all of those, it's our own negative programming. It's crazy, right? Now, talk to me about the social media, because I know, like you said, you've gotten these emails, right? It was kind of an explosive thing. Did social media help you ignite how you connected with people? And, you started on Facebook, you noticed a change in the types of people that are engaging. Tell us how that, what does that shift looks like? Because we have a lot of business owners and people who are in marketing that listen to the show.
Mm-hmm. So, I just said to people, just reach out to me, send me a message, and people have used that, and I appreciate that. And I try to post, I try not to be banal when I'm posting on social media. I don't want to just, a picture of a cat in a hat or whatever, but something inspirational. I'm not taking anything away. I post,
silly things.
Silly things as well. It's fun. It's a great way to express yourself. But I was using it. I was glad that it was authentic for me. That what I would wake up with an idea, or because I study every single day, so out of that study something might come up that I think, oh, this is going to be good for people to know. I know my lesson, but it's nice to share things when I gain new insight. So it doesn't look different on the face of it, but in terms of the messages that I'm getting, and new people that have become friends of mine on Facebook friends, it's really nice to see people in different walks of life, like religious lead or people who lead churches and things like that, actually asking me questions. I think that I'm really honored by that. Business owners and medical people and people who work in TV. I have a wider scope of people who, like you say, are taking this seriously, and that's something that I really try to say to people whenever I get the opportunity to. The reason I'm doing the things that I'm doing, I was invited to speak at a faith and modernity conference at the House of Lords, and I spoke about this stuff. And we have people from the Middle East and people from the church in the UK, high up archbishop-y type. Those aren't their official titles, but you know what I mean. These are very well respected, learned theologians, and I look in a room and I see everybody looking at me and listening to me, and I think one of the things Mitch Horowitz said to me very, very early on in my career is never be embarrassed. And I hadn't considered that I was particularly embarrassed, but I am now embarrassed to talk to people. Sometimes we get worried about people looking at us funny. If we say use the power of your imagination or the power of consciousness or whatever, we think, oh, one of those, and we kind of hold back in what we say. But I'm just stating that these are the facts according to me. This is my experience. This is my truth. And I'm speaking it in this space. It might not look like this is a forum for this kind of thing, but you can speak it anywhere. I'm now going into work. I can't talk too much about stuff I would tell you off camera about some of the work that I'm doing now, but I am able to be involved in real life social conflict and with the government, and to work with the government, and they are trusting my insight. And later on in the year I'm going to be involved in a project which is about relations between law enforcement and disenfranchised communities, and I'm using what I know to do that work. And sometimes we think people aren't going to receive it, but they really are. Like you said about these ladies that came up to you and spoke to you, it sometimes is surprising, the people who are interested in what you have to say. And so if you take yourself seriously, if you know you're speaking the truth, you know that it's an authentic experience of yours, you have nothing to worry about. The people who are meant to hear it are going to step forward. They're going to show up. So I feel very, very privileged.
Yeah, and it's interesting, law enforcement with disenfranchised communities, and our media makes the police officers look like the bad guys. And yet, and I don't remember what the event was. It was some riot, and the woman, I believe it was her son who got shot or something. It was very personal to her, and she came forward because it was all about the Blue Lives Matter and all of that. That whole thing a couple of years ago. And this woman came forward and said, let me just share with you, you're saying, but how about all lives matter, number one? Number two, everybody was running from the gunfire, right? She was there with her son or whoever it was. She said the police officers were running towards the gunfire. how can we sit here and judge them when they're running into harm's way? We should be coming from a place of gratitude. So I love that all of a sudden now, like law enforcement, how intense are they, right? Police officers are pretty intense. They have to be, I get it. But that they're opening up to this concept of we can have harmony, we can, through this metaphysical conversations and understanding this language. It's brilliant and it's needed. And I'll ask you this, are you finding it happening, again, as your awareness grows and more and more people are your stories of speaking in front of these theologians and all of these things, but are you finding it's happening even more rapidly than you imagined it would?
I think so, but and I was thinking about that the other day, right? So I was having this conversation with my mum. It's so funny how all of this stuff seems to be happening, and I'm getting invites and all of this kind of stuff. And my mum said something really interesting to me. She said, like Neville says, this stuff is always there, but we're preoccupied with something else. And so when we come in,
you froze.
Oh, this is happening really fast, but he's saying, and we second guess it, we get suspicious of how natural some things are for us, but he's saying that our default setting should be greatness, every last one of us. We should actually realize that we are important and we're here to do important stuff. But we're, like you said at the top of the show, Connie, we are the ones who put the brakes on that. We're our own worst enemy, because we're thinking about something else. We're thinking about all the stuff we can't do, all the stuff we've done wrong, and not the stuff that we've done right. And if I could just slip in, one of the things that I was saying that I think, certainly with the work with the police, that they found surprising was, here I was saying that you guys need self-care too. And you're not taking care of yourselves. And that is going to come across in the way you are perceived, because you're tense. I can't imagine what it means to be a police officer, but they were so receptive to the fact that somebody is getting it. I said, I can't imagine some of the things you and I can turn away. If we don't like something on the news, we can turn it off. These are human beings that have to go in and rescue children, rescue people. So I'm saying that what I'm talking about is helping us build bridges through understanding, but recognizing that everybody needs to take care of themselves. Emotionally, psychologically. It's not just about your training, it's about you being well as you go into this really, really difficult job. And you will find that it's not as taxing on you. So it's about really understanding everybody and where we're all coming from with this. So it's so exciting. But I just wanted to mention that to say, it might seem odd that we're talking about metaphysics in that context, but it applies to everything we go through as human beings. And that's what I'm really excited about sharing.
Just a great example. And they're thinking, right, because these are heroes. I mean, no matter how you slice and dice it, like you said, they're truly heroes. And they're thinking, well, I can't worry about me because I have to help the next person. But if you aren't whole and healthy and strong, and how can you go out and save the world, or how can you go out and be that responsible for people's lives? I mean, this is pretty firefighters. They're running into, I mean, honestly, I look in awe of because I think to myself, holy moly, why don't they stop and think, I could die? I don't think I'm going to do that today. They don't even, that thought doesn't even enter their mind. So this, I love that you're working with these people who are in dire situations, probably almost daily, if not weekly, depending on where they're located, cities or suburb, or rural environment. But at some point they're facing these dire situations. I just love it. Are you planning to do any teaching or public speaking so people can like find you? Everybody needs to talk to you. That's how I feel. Like, everybody should talk to Kate, okay?
So it's really funny. When I was in the States last time, I was supposed to do a workshop that didn't come together, but it really, it was good because it gave me time to grow. So I think everything that happens, it happens at the right time. So I'm actually going to be talking to Mitch about doing some work in LA. We haven't really had time to get that come together, but the work that I in Oxford in October this year, and it's a conflict resolution conference. Oh, hi Connie, sorry, you
that did I freeze or did you freeze?
Yeah,
I
froze
did.
for me.
Okay. You froze
But
for
anyway,
me. It's good. Yeah.
so I'll be speaking at a conflict resolution conference. So it's just about right now the direction that my work is taking me in, just finding the right space. So at the moment, I'm saying to people, I'm still happy to speak to you one-on-one. If you want to speak to me on Skype, I can make myself available to you, and it could even be a group of people talking on Skype if you're in another part of the world from me or whatever. But it looks as if I wouldn't say academic per se, but in a more professional kind of context is where my speaking is going to be taking place at the moment, but it's at the forefront of my mind. So I always use the opportunity to teach, and I'm amazed that people that I would consider to be academic giants are listening to what I have to say. It really is quite phenomenal.
Your voice is powerful, right? It's needed. It's needed in the world we live in today, with just the anger and terrible, just rudeness. It's rampant, but I think the light is shining brighter and brighter every day. So I get excited because I think we're hearing it. We're hearing what we need to hear. Is the new book out yet?
It's not. I just finished it, and when I finished it, I was happy with it, but I didn't love it. So I'm in that stage. Sometimes what makes sense to you when you read it through, it's not going to make sense. It's not going to make sense to someone else. So I got my mom and my sister to read it, and they were like, "Huh?" So I kind of, they got it, but it's like they need a bit more information and stuff like that. So it's useful to have that kind of feedback.
Oh gosh, yeah.
But it's finished, it's written, it's just not out. But I'm hoping for next year.
I love it, and we'll definitely do a show. We'll definitely do a show so that we could talk and really deep dive into the value of the new book. But everybody, Kate's book, Infinite Possibilities: How to Use the Ideas of Neville Goddard to Create the Life You Want. And I'm telling you, it's like a step-by-step manual on how to apply something, try it out, and then just see what happens. And they're simple. Can you give one example? We're almost out of time, but can you give one simple exercise that you give for people to start to use that muscle?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's called Magic Mirror. It's the one I always go to because it's so something that is actually a lot more familiar to people than they might realize. So you're getting ready for work or whatever it might be, and you look in the mirror and you see yourself. Just take yourself in without judgment, and then close your eyes and imagine that the person reflected back is the person you want to be. So you could take one thing or several things. I recommend one thing. So for example, if you are just a subordinate, a member of your workforce and you want to be the manager, what would the manager look like? What would your expression be if you're getting ready for work as the manager? And then open your eyes and see that person reflected back. It doesn't matter if it's not a physical fact at that moment, but start to condition your mind and just see what happens when you get to work that day. See how you function, see how your colleagues relate to you. Just say, "Oh my God, you're so awesome. I love you. You're so wonderful. You're alive. This is great. You're healthy." It doesn't matter what your condition is at that moment, even if you're not in the best of health, but just say, "I'm at peace, I'm healthy, I'm happy," and just leave it and watch what happens throughout the course of your day.
And think about the power. I just want to share with you, when I did that exercise the first time, I'm like, oh, I'm smart. I could do more than one thing, because you notice how you said pick one thing, right? What is the expression on your face as the manager? So I'm like, I'm going to do 5 things because I'm that good. And what do you think happened? It was a train wreck. Our brain can't absorb 5 things at once. So when I just giggled when you said that, I'm like, yes, that's what it said in the book. And yes, I think I'm an overachiever, that I could do 5, big show off, right? And people that know me are going, yeah, she's a show off. She thinks she could do more. And it's funny because that one exercise, here's the power though, Kate. You do it every day, and without realizing it, the shift happens. And this is what I love about your book. The shift happens, and all of a sudden you become you become that new person, or your health has improved. You go to the doctor and they're like, oh, your blood work looks better. And you don't stop and think, oh, it's the mirror exercise. We think, oh yeah, I've been watching my diet.
Hmm.
Pay attention, and even if you have to write them down for yourself, if you're one of those, see, I believe, so I don't have to write it
Hmm.
down because I think, oh, that's because Kate told me to do this, right? But if you're a naysayer, start to write down what your thoughts were that you were looking in the mirror to do, and then a week, 2 weeks, 5 weeks, go back to that list and see how transformative it is. I love that exercise. That's a great one to share. So thank you for doing that. All right, everybody, I hope we have whet your appetite for more, because I always love my time with Kate, and I always want more. So if you would like more information, go to Catherine's website. It's Katherine
So
Jegede.
it's just Facebook. I'm not on the
Oh,
website.
you're not. Can you? I should have
No.
asked that at the beginning of the show.
No, that's absolutely fine. I did tell you that before. So no, the website is not up at the moment. But if they want to connect with me, Facebook, and I try to just keep stuff going, telling you what I'm doing there. So
Perfect.
facebook.com/Katherine Jegede author.
So Catherine, and I'll put that link on the Web Talk Radio Enlightenment of Change show. I'll put it there. Catherine is Katherine, and Jegede is Jegede. And find her on Facebook. But I'll put that link, Catherine. That's great. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Guys, if you want more of me, which I hope you do, you can email me directly at Connie@whitmanassociates.com. And like Catherine, like Kate, I call her Kate, you guys can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. I will not turn you away. I will accept your request. So again, Kate, thank you so much. I love our conversations more than I think you'll ever know. The book is amazing, and it's so funny. I had a real brief. I had a meltdown last night with my husband. Just a busy first half of the year for me. A lot of good things, graduations and baby showers, but with traveling, and I had an appendix out, and then rescheduling, and I feel like I can't come up for air, and I needed this show today. This is interesting, right? How the universe delivers what you need when you need it. But it's funny because this weekend we finally have nothing. I have a little bit of work to do. I said I just need a few hours in my office. But I am going to take that book out again and go back to my basics of what I know. I just need to be reminded, because I know that, and Kate, we're human. We backslide when we get caught up of my client needs that, I have to do that, I have to respond to that, that report needs to be done, I have to finish this manual, oh, my son needs this, the kids need that, he's graduating, oh my God, we have life. It's life, guys. I get it. So thank you for the reminder. I'm going to go back, pull out my manual that has already notes written in it. But I'm going to go back to basics, Kate, with the book, because I need it again in my life. I've backslid. I've definitely have old habits that need to be refined again. So I thank you. The show is timely in my life as well. So with tremendous gratitude, thank you for being on.
Oh, thank you. It's always a
Yes.
pleasure. I love talking to you,
I
Connie.
know you know I love you. I'm a big Kate fan.
You know, I'm a Connie fan.
I love it. Yay. Mutual Admiration Society here. I love it. And you guys, I love that you join us weekly, and I hope you continue to join me weekly as we question, build, and discover together how we can address change and whatever that is for you in your life, and realize that, there's so many tools and so many people like my guest, Kate, to help us navigate and on our journey to our own personal greatness. Not that we're not already great, but we even want better and more as we go forward. So Kate, thank you again. Thank you all for listening. I truly love that you join me weekly. You've been listening to Enlightenment of Change with me, your host, Connie Whitman, on webtalkradio.net. I wish you all an inspired week. Try that mirroring exercise that Kate offered, because I think it's an easy, simple, and awesome way to change our lives. Thank you all. Thank you, Kate. Have a great week.